This recording is going to give you a general overview of these different types of research: quantitative, qualitative, and mixed research. So as we go through this class, you'll start to see that there's these three types of research: quantitative, qualitative, and mixed research. And so quantitative research is the yin to the qualitative research yang, and they kind of mesh and mold together, and then that's how you get mixed research. So keep that in mind as we go through this course and as you start dealing with your research topics, that almost any hypothesis, any research question can be answered in all three of these types of research. It's just done differently. So each of these research types is like their own research paradigm. Remembering that a paradigm is kind of a perspective or the way that you see the world. So for researchers, this is how we set our assumptions, and can be part of our values. And usually what happens is those researchers that are in the same paradigms and the same way of thinking congregate together. So you have to keep that in mind as you do your research, that it's okay to be surrounded by other people that think the same way you do, but keep an open mind that there are these other paradigms out there, and there might be another, may not be better, but there may be another way of answering the same research questions. So a way to think about doing research is like the scientists in a lab, or action researchers in a community, the field of researchers doing a particular project, and then we have social sciences scientists, which we all are in like the College of Education, and they each have their paradigms. So in research, there are essentially three paradigms, and there have been some real true paradigm wars over which of these are the best and most correct. We won't worry about that as much in this class. We're going to worry more about what makes each of these different, figure out which one you best fit in or your research fits in, and how to make your research the best that it can be. So we have a quantitative, qualitative, and a mixed paradigm. And they each have their characteristics here of how they're different. So you'll probably want to pause here and look at this table and look at the differences between them. Some of the main differences is like quantitative is the only research paradigm that's very objective, where qualitative and mixed are more subjective, but mixed can be both objective and subjective, dependent on the parts and pieces that are with it. And quantitative mostly uses numbers. This is where you're going to get a lot of your hard stats, whereas qualitative is mostly your words and your images, and this is where you have your interviews and those types of things. And then mixed methods can go either side, and it can be more quantitative, it can be more qualitative, or it can be a nice mix of the two, just depending on the research. So your chapter does introduce you to these three paradigms and kind of the paradigm wars. The main things you need to know about the paradigm wars is just that it's these different researchers that think different ways and do things differently, quarreling over which is the best way. So if you think about it, the early scientists, they were all quantitative. They're starting with figuring out the mathematics behind their observations and the science and the math behind what they see. And so for many, many years, this was the dominant way of thinking. This was the dominant paradigm. And so then in the 1980s, when qualitative became increasingly popular, because people were seeing that, especially when you're dealing with people, the numbers don't tell you everything, that there's a lot that you're missing because you're not getting the images and the words. And so then this begins this back and forth between quantitative and qualitative as to which is the best way of seeing the world and approaching these things. And then in the 21st century, we started getting some mixed research, and it's becoming increasingly popular because now it's combining these two paradigms and it's almost the best of both worlds, where you're able to use the numbers and have the words and the images that support those results, or vice versa. So mixed methods is now coming into this paradigm war, and it's trying to get these two different paradigms of quantitative and qualitative to mesh and mold together. So this slide gives you some additional characteristics for these research paradigms. The main things to know is that quantitative research is very much a confirmatory scientific method, whereas qualitative is more exploratory, where you're looking for ideas. And then mixed methods is a mix of the two. Because of this, they have different ways of thinking that have specific names. So quantitative is post-positivism, and that's basically dealing with that deductive reasoning. And then constructivism, or inductive reasoning, is more qualitative. And then because mixed research is a mixture of the two, it's pragmatism. So it's understanding that sometimes you need more quantitative than qualitative, or vice versa, or you need a combination of the two to get to the answer to your research question and your hypotheses. So in the next few weeks, we're really going to get into the details of this research typology, but it'd be good for you to just get acquainted with this diagram so that as we dig in deeper, if you need to regroup, this is where you come back to. So quantitative is either experimental or non-experimental. Mixed methods is there in the middle, and then qualitative has these 5 different ways of being able to get to the answers. So phenomenology, ethnography, case study, grounded theory, historical. And so this is a really good diagram to have and to come back to as you start getting the nitty-gritty details of each one of these paradigms.